sun always seemed to hesitate for a moment before painting the walls of Mr. Albright's dusty study, a final golden sigh against the towers of books and forgotten trinkets. Elara was already there, the scent of lemon polish and brewing, chamomile tea cutting through the room's scent of old paper and loneliness. She moved with a quiet efficiency that had become their ritual. For 6 months, since she'd found him confused and shivering on the park bench a block from his grand, crumbling mansion, she had come. She wasn't a hired nurse, she was a neighbor, a stranger who had become his anchor. The Queen of Sheba arrives. Mr. Albright's voice, a dry rustle of leaves, came from his armchair. His eyes, the color of a faded summer sky, twinkled. "And she's brought your favorite," Elara smiled, setting the tea tray down. "And your medication. No arguments today, Arthur." He waved a dismissive liver-spotted hand. "Pills for the body, but your stories, my dear, are the medicine for the soul. Tell me about your world. Did the barista with the unfortunate tattoo finally ask you out?" Elara laughed, a sound that felt out of place in the still house. She told him about her struggling art, her tiny apartment, her life. In return, he gave her stories of a world long gone, of sailing ships and first loves, of building an empire from nothing. A deep grandfatherly affection had rooted between them, a tender shoot in the shadow of his immense silent home. She never asked about his family. He only ever mentioned a distant grandson, chasing ghosts in Europe, with a sad final tone that discouraged further questions. She was arranging a fresh blanket over his knees when the front door, which she'd never known to be unlocked, creaked open. The sound was an intrusion, a violation of their sanctuary. Footsteps, sharp and confident, echoed in the hall. Then the study doorway was filled with figures. A young man, tall and severe in a tailored suit, his eyes scanning the room with cold appraisal. Behind him stood 2 men with the grim, document-clutching posture of lawyers. "Grandfather," the young man said. His voice was smooth, devoid of warmth. Mr. Albright stiffened. "Julian." The name was a sigh of defeat. "You're back." The lawyer said it was time. Past time. Julian said, his gaze slicing from his grandfather to Elara. It was a look that stripped her down to her thrift store cardigan and found her wanting. "And who is this?" Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm Elara. I help your grandfather." "I see," Julian said. A world of insinuation in 2 words. He gestured to the lawyers. "This is Mr. Thorne and Mr. Vance. They're here to oversee the transition of power of attorney, and to ensure the estate is secure." The air left the room. Elara felt a cold dread trickle down her spine. "Transition?" One of the lawyers, Thorne, stepped forward. "We have a court order, Mr. Albright. Based on medical evaluations, your grandson, Julian, is now your legal guardian and has control over all your assets and affairs." "You can't do this." Elara's voice was sharper than she intended. "He's lucid. He's fine with my help." Julian's lips curled into a thin smile. "Your help is precisely the issue. We've been monitoring the situation." A young woman inserting herself into the life of a vulnerable, wealthy old man. It's a tired script, but an effective one. The accusation hung in the air, ugly and suffocating. Elara looked at Arthur, pleading with her eyes. "Say something. Tell them." But the old man seemed to have shrunk. The twinkle in his eyes was gone, replaced by a film of shame and profound exhaustion. He looked down at his gnarled hands. "Arthur?" Elara whispered, her voice breaking. It's all right, Elara," he murmured, not meeting her gaze. "It's not all right." Tears welled in her eyes, hot and bitter. "I've never taken a thing from him. Not a penny. You can search my flat. I only cared for him." "A likely story," Julian scoffed. "We have bank statements showing unexplained cash withdrawals. Small amounts, but it adds up. A classic grooming process." They were lies. Poisonous, clever lies. She looked from Julian's cold triumph to the lawyers' impersonal faces, and finally to Arthur, who seemed to be retreating into a shell of himself. The betrayal was a physical blow. She had given this man her time, her compassion, a piece of her heart, and he was letting them destroy her with it. You have 5 minutes to gather your things and leave the premises, Julian said, his tone final. If you attempt to contact my grandfather again, we will press charges. Defeated, hollowed out, Elara numbly collected her bag. She couldn't even look at Arthur again. The man she thought she knew was a phantom. The beautiful, fragile world they'd built in this dusty study had been a lie. As she walked towards the door, the lawyers parted for her, a silent, judgmental gauntlet. Just as she crossed the threshold, her vision blurred with tears. Mr. Albright's voice, suddenly clear and strong, cut through the heavy silence. Julian. Elara paused, but didn't turn. She couldn't. The box, Arthur said. The small rosewood one on the mantelpiece. Bring it to me. There was a moment of hesitation, then the sound of footsteps. Julian must have retrieved it. Open it, Arthur commanded. A click, a rustle of paper. Read it, the old man's voice was steel now. Aloud. Julian's voice, now laced with a confusion that bordered on panic, began to read. Being of sound mind, and as a final test of character, I hereby bequeath my entire estate, including all properties, holdings, and assets, to Elara Reed, in gratitude for her unconditional kindness. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of paper trembling in someone's hand. Elara turned slowly. Julian was ashen, staring at the document in horror. The lawyers were frozen. And Arthur Albright was looking directly at her, his faded eyes now blazing with an intensity she had never seen. You planned this? Julian choked out. I needed to be sure, Arthur said, his voice quiet but ringing with authority. Sure that the only person who would ever truly care for a lonely old man was the one who wanted nothing from him. You, Julian, played your part perfectly. The greedy, suspicious grandson. You proved her worth with every vile accusation you leveled. He turned his gaze fully to Elara, his expression softening into an apology and a profound, heartbreaking love. I am so sorry for the pain, my dear girl, he said. But I had to know, and you passed. You passed by being exactly who you are. He then looked back at his stunned grandson and the lawyers, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a shout. Now, Arthur Albright said, a king reclaiming his throne, get out of my house.